I was hitting some pretty intense burnout coupled with my anxiety disorder kind of reaching fever pitch, and I was really unwell. I was losing weight. I wasn't able to keep food down. Like all these things were like super wrong. And, a doctor could only tell me, oh, this is stress. You just have to be less stressed. I'm like, wonderful. That's not going to change anytime soon. Like my life does not give me the ability to have less stress. So I have to find a way to manage it. And Reiki was the tool that kind of brought everything together for me. And it remains the thing that I do most consistently. It is a practice I engage with the most regularly. There are lots of tools in my toolbox, but the thing that I love about it is once you receive this training, you don't have to go anywhere else. It is always with you. And so Reiki's enabled me to go from like a dozen or more panic attacks in a day to like I have maybe a couple a year.
Wow,
And
that's amazing. Welcome to Onward Live, a live stream focused on encouraging you to create a life you love living now. Let's go beyond success to significance. Being clear on our why is crucial. It requires doing the inner work, finding ourselves, getting to know ourselves, embracing our inner child, shedding social conditioning, and letting go of perfect. We know obstacles make us stronger. We can dream big and take action. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. I invite you to tune in every week and engage with me and my inspiring guests. Invite your friends. Let's make time for what matters most in our lives. Let's move onward together. Hello, thank you for joining me tonight. This is Emily, the host of Onward Live, and it gets turned into the Onward podcast afterwards. And I'm excited to be here tonight to talk to my guest, Nicholas Pearson. We're going to be talking about Reiki, and I know very little about Reiki, just a little bit. Not even enough to be dangerous, actually. So welcome and thank you. I'm tuning in from Denver. So my room looks a little different. I'm visiting my daughter. Last week I was in Seattle, and I wanted to share, I'm so excited today. I got the news that I am a certified coach. And if you have ever gone down the coaching path, you'll know what it takes to be a certified coach. It is a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of training. And I'm really proud that I got that notification today, and it just made my day today. And I wanted to share that with you guys. So if you're tuning in, let us know that you're here. Let me know that you can hear me, because remember, one other time I was live and I guess I had my microphone muted. So I revealed to you guys that I am not perfect. So anyway, let me bring in my guest, Nicholas. So I'm excited to have him here. Let's see. There he is. Nicholas, welcome.
thank you so much for having me, Emily. It's a pleasure to join you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you and with you and learn about Reiki. And, we're talking about how it can help heal us, and, how integrative healing can help us navigate life's challenges. And, I've changed my show a little bit. I think from when you first signed up, it was about facing adversity and moving forward and discovering ourselves along the way. And we still talk about that kind of stuff on this show, because I think in order, we all want to create a life we love living. And that's what I talk about now. Like, how do you create a life you love living? And I want to show that you can do that even after you've gone through adversity. So we're going to talk about, one of the things we're going to talk about today is how you've used Reiki to help with your mental health, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's been
Yeah.
a big component of my wellness routine, we'll say.
Yeah. So maybe what you can explain first is, what is Reiki? Because many people may not even know what it is.
For sure, that is a great place to get started. So the word Reiki comes into English via the Japanese language. And when we look at the original terminology in its original writing system, the kanji or the, Japanese characters, there's a lot of nuance there. And so we do our best to kind of contract that into as small space as we can so we can get those cute little buzzwords to use as a translation or a definition. Oftentimes they're kind of one-dimensional, they fall a little short. So some ways that we might define the words Reiki in English include something like spiritual energy or soul power or universal life force. And they're helpful. They're kind of way showers, but they don't really unpack the complexity and nuance that the terms really have. If we were to take the terms rei and ki, those kanji, and put them in a modern Japanese to English translator app, we might get words like ambience or energy. We might get something that means like mysterious quality. And the truth is that the connotation of the terms in Japanese has changed a lot in the exactly 100 years ago this month since the system was founded in Japan. So when we talk about Reiki, we're not only talking about this kind of numinous energy, this kind of mystical thing, but we're also talking about the system of practice, which formerly we call Reiki Ryoho, which just means Reiki healing system. And this type of hands-on healing and spiritual practice comes from a man by the name of Usui Mikao, Usui being his family name. Like in Japan, I would be Pearson Nicholas. We'd do it in that order. So it's Usui Reiki Ryoho, or Usui's Reiki healing method. And the goal for this practice is really about finding our most authentic connection to our real self, to maybe the cosmos at large. And so when you talk about Reiki as universal energy or universal life force, what we really mean is that it is kind of like the underpinnings of the whole universe. And the realization that the founder had after 21 days of fasting and meditating on a mountainside in Japan with the goal of either reaching enlightenment or dying. He was going to do one or the other. We got lucky. It was the former. He summarized his experience with this expression in Japanese, uchu ware soku uchu, which more or less translates to I exist in the universe and the universe exists in me. So if we think about Reiki through that lens, Reiki is the experience of the universe in you and you in the universe, and therefore the inseparability of the two. It's about trying to get to that kind of non-dual place. We might do that through meditation. We might do that through hands-on healing. We might do it through all the kind of external things that are in the formal practice of Reiki as hands-on healing. But we might also do it in how we live and how we breathe and how we connect to others. And my hope is that the real message of Reiki is what we do with our lives and not just what we do in our hands-on healing practice.
That it's so interesting. I'm putting a few things together. Like, I don't know if I brought the book up. I'm reading the book, almost done with it, The Power of Awareness by Nevo. And then I'm also reading this book, Oneness, which is all about that, like how about the collective consciousness and how the universe is in us, Christ is in us, God is in us, right? And that's kind of what you were just talking about. I'm trying to put it together from the basics because that's where I am kind of in learning all of this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the fundamental thing that we get out of Reiki is hopefully a sense of peace. But where does that peace come from? What is the actual mechanism for it? It's the surrender that we have to that experience of the cosmos at large, and that we are the cosmos at large.
We are that. Yeah. It's like we're not separate. It's oneness, which is what that book. So I went to a Reiki practitioner once, and this was right. You may not know, but I retired from working for the Navy for like over 30 years, 34 years. And, I was just like, go, 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 not really feeling my feelings, not really understanding what my emotions were, and thinking that once I retired, everything was going to change in my life and I was going to be able to slow down and meditate and all this stuff because I was going to have plenty of time. And realizing that, no, that's not going to happen automatically. I had to do some work on myself. And so initially, when I went to the one time I've been to a Reiki practitioner, she was like, had her hands on me and stuff. I guess she's feeling my energy doing something. I didn't feel anything. And is that because you think that I've done a lot of work on myself in the past 3 years, but do you think it's because I didn't really know how to just like slow down and be in the moment and not have my mind wander?
That's a possibility. I always tell clients and students that there's no right or wrong way to feel Reiki, including feeling nothing at all. There's nothing wrong with us if we don't get all the bells and whistles, if it doesn't feel like this kind of cosmic force downloaded into us. You didn't do anything wrong. Our capacity to perceive is very personal. And I think it has a lot to do with kind of like the bandwidth we dial into, like what station is our mind set to. And if we're in this really strange foreign kind of space for the first time receiving a Reiki session, then we're probably at surface level dealing with everything in the space around us and how it feels so different to ordinary life. And even
Yeah.
like, almost 20 years into my practice, there are days where I sit and do my hands-on healing, and maybe it's not this beautiful pouring of the cosmic energy through me. Maybe it's just sitting in stillness. And I think that itself is therapeutic. There
Yeah, I didn't
doesn't
know how to do that back
Yeah,
then. I couldn't do that.
for sure. But just the exposure therapy is really good for us. Like
Mhm.
having a chance where we don't get a choice, we unplug, that's really good for the brain.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story and why you got into studying Reiki. You've been studying it for a long time. You've written so many books on it, which we'll talk about too. But like, tell us a little bit about your history and why you decided to use Reiki to help heal yourself.
So Reiki has been a really intimate friend and ally and teacher for me through the years. I've always been interested in like integrative medicine and the healing arts, we'll say. I kind of came to Reiki obliquely. I was doing a lot of work with like gemstone therapy and crystal healing and really involved in some other kind of esoteric things. And you can't go anywhere in the metaphysical field and not meet Reiki people. There's just so many of us everywhere. Everybody's a Reiki master for whatever that means in their form of practice. So, I had an appreciation for what I anticipated Reiki was going to be. And eventually I had the chance to actually sit down and study. Found a teacher that I connected with, herself being half Japanese. She brought a lot of appreciation and insight into the kind of cultural background behind it. And we did the best we could with the tools we had. And in that era, that was 2006, I took my first Reiki class, and we know a lot more about Reiki history. We know more about the kind of circulatory development and all sorts of other things that we just didn't have access to then. But at the end of the day, the biggest teacher isn't a book, it isn't history, it isn't even the person in front of you giving you access to the system, it is the practice itself. So one of the main reasons I was really called to working with Reiki is because I have an anxiety and panic disorder, and I was doing other things to help manage that. I, had at that point already been a frequent meditator and was working with external tools, whether that was going to see a therapist, taking allopathic medicine, working with gemstones and flower essences. But all of those put power in something else. And after receiving the initiation in the system of Reiki and having that, what we call maybe attunement, or Reiju is the original word in Japanese, which means like a soul gift or a spiritual gift that's conferred to you, that gives you the ability or the awareness of this indwelling ability to connect to Reiki energy. I didn't need this external force anymore. I didn't need to hold the rock. I didn't need to have the dropper bottle full of flower essences. I didn't have to sit on the couch in the therapist's office. Those are all things I continued to do because they're good, but I could also feel a difference by just sitting there. The power was in me, and I didn't have to invest in something outside of myself. I could feel like I had responsibility for my own well being. And also, maybe for the first time in years, I learned how to relax. I'm a tightly wound kind of person. Part of that is by design. I think a lot of it is just cultural. We all tend to be kind of tightly wound people. If you're a type A person, you want to get things done, you want it. And I
Right.
certainly do. But we can only do that for so long before we're just running on fumes, and eventually we run out. So I was hitting some pretty intense burnout coupled with my anxiety disorder kind of reaching fever pitch, and I was really unwell. I was losing weight, I wasn't able to keep food down. Like all these things were like super wrong, and a doctor could only tell me, "Oh, this is stress. You just have to be less stressed." I'm like, "Wonderful. That's not going to change anytime soon. Like my life does not give me the ability to have less stress. So I have to find a way to manage it." And Reiki was the tool that kind of brought everything together for me. And it remains the thing that I do most consistently. It is a practice I engage with the most regularly. There are lots of tools in my toolbox, but the thing that I love about it is once you receive this training, you don't have to go anywhere else. It is always with you. And so Reiki's enabled me to go from like a dozen or more panic attacks in a day to like I have maybe a couple a year.
Wow,
And
that's amazing.
Yeah, I am generally I like to think of myself as a reasonably well-adjusted human being as well as anyone can be in today's world, because it's a strange world and nobody's perfect. Nobody is without error or struggle, but the peace that you cultivate from that stillness, from that hands-on practice, from really sitting there with a system of Reiki is something that you carry through. It creates this kind of inertia that you can take out into the world around you. So it's not just when you're lying on the table seeing the practitioner. It's not just when you're in class learning how to do it. It's not just in meditation with hands on yourself. It's your whole life becomes your Reiki practice.
So for your Reiki practice, do you go see other people and they perform the practice on you, and you also perform it on yourself?
These days, I rarely get to go and receive a session. I'd say pre-pandemic, there'd at least be like, we'd do like practitioner swaps. My colleagues and I, or friends and I, we'd all get together and do like Reiki shares or Reiki
Right.
circles so we can work on one another and on ourselves. But I have a committed daily self-practice. I do self-treatment every single day. I also recite the Reiki precepts in Japanese every single day. And these are kind of like the heart and soul of our practice. They're deceptively simple, but they are meant to be the kind of roadmap to get to that state that the founder had. But we don't have to sit there on the mountain for 21 days and fast and meditate and hope it's either enlightenment or death. Like, he made it easier for us since he had that experience, that kind of transmission, if you will, from the universe that gave birth to the system of Reiki. He gave us tools so we don't have to do that. So one of those tools is hands-on treatment. Another one is the 5 principles. In the second degree, we learn like symbols and mantras that we work with. In the third degree, we learn even more tools. So lately, I'm really committed to my everyday self practice, and wherever possible, of course, I want to share with others. In pandemic stricken world, we do a lot of work remotely, and that's one of the
Yeah.
beautiful gifts, being able to come together. Reiki at the second degree gives us the ability to treat people who are non-local, do distance healing, and also the virtual practice sessions. I host monthly practice sessions so people from all lineages can come together and sit in the space and support one another.
That's interesting, because it was like, I think in my first year, I've been doing this podcast for almost 3 years. In my first year, I interviewed somebody about Reiki, and that's when I went to a Reiki specialist and didn't really notice anything. And then I kind of stopped because I started focusing on other aspects of my, coaching and stuff. But she told me that she can do Reiki over Zoom. And I was just curious, for people who are watching and people who will listen to this later, is there a way to, like, for somebody who still doesn't quite understand what you're talking about when it comes to Reiki and like what a session would look like? Is there a way that you can kind of maybe demonstrate what a session might look like, or kind of talk us through a session so we have a feel for that?
Absolutely. So, let's say we're going to see a Reiki practitioner in person. We're probably going to be invited to lie down on a massage table or maybe sit in a chair, but Reiki can really be administered from any position. It's all
Okay.
about making yourself comfortable. And traditionally, it is performed with very, very light touch. So, not manipulation of tissues like massage. A Reiki practitioner isn't necessarily moving, manipulating, doing, pushing, sucking, or drawing energy. You're just the passive vessel. The goal of the practitioner is just to hold space and let the innate wisdom of the client's body and heart and mind and spirit kind of draw Reiki passively through the practitioner. So when I lay my hands somewhere on the body, I'm not sending Reiki, but wherever they're laid, Reiki can be drawn in. So it's a very, very passive thing. So the most effective Reiki practitioner is the one who does the least. And that's a hard thing to do. Now, in the second degree, we learn specific techniques and protocols that enable us to practice across distance. So, 100 years ago in 1922 in Japan, they didn't have Zoom
Oh, they
or,
didn't. Okay. Yeah.
or FaceTime or
Right.
smartphones or telephones, really, in, in
Yeah.
in rural areas. So in that case, what you would do is kind of hold the image or the idea of the person in your mind and use a particular symbol or mantra to connect. Photographs are a really popular way to treat long distance, but most people couldn't afford photographs. And although the founder was really innovative and really loved this kind of newfound technology, because Japan had only kind of recently opened its borders to trade with the Western world and then came this influx of technology. So since not everyone could afford to have the picture taken, people would like draw stick figures and label names, or even just write people's names down with where they were, or their other relevant information, and people would use that as a way to treat. So I think if the founder Usui were alive today, he'd be totally for using the technology that we've got,
Yeah.
um, as long as we do it with enough respect. So if I were going to meet with a client for a session one-on-one via Zoom, it would probably look a lot like just guided meditation. More likely, what I would invite them to do is forego Zoom, just find quiet time to relax. We'll text or email or something at the start and end of the session, and hopefully they have a nice blissful 30 minutes or hour or however long that's going to be. And if they don't, we'll talk about maybe why. But again, the role of the Reiki practitioner is to be that passive vessel through which the kind of compassion of the universe flows. We might call that an energy. We might call that energy Reiki. We might also just call it the phenomenon of holding space.
Got it. So I know some people who have, because I know I've learned about the chakras, and that when we have energy that's blocked in our body, that can create dis-ease, disease, and that Reiki helps, from what I've understood, clear some of those chakras. Is that true? Like clear energy also that's stuck, maybe that's not moving through us. Is that true? I don't
That's
know.
one model that we can use. If we think about what Japan looked like in 1922, they certainly weren't using the chakra system. The chakra system as we know it today with the 7 rainbow colors really only dates to like 1977. So the system of Reiki in Japan in 1922 was we'll say a little bit more malleable, was a little less written in stone. The chakra system is a really helpful model though for people to kind of relate to energy anatomy and to relate to the
Mhm.
psychological underpinnings that relate to different parts of the body and different energy centers. So yes, we can use that model. What Reiki does, like if we want to kind of like summarize, what is the effect of a Reiki session? What is the
Yeah.
effect of Reiki practice? It supports the process of homeostasis in the body, the mind, and the spirit. So, like biologically, all the homeostatic mechanisms of the body are the things that regulate our ability to stay alive. They keep us in balance. But we also have homeostasis of the psyche. We have homeostasis of the spirit. So what Reiki does is it supports our natural ability to get to that space of equilibrium. If we're using the chakra model, maybe it is dealing with an excess or deficiency of energy. If we're using traditional Chinese medicine and looking at the meridians, maybe we're balancing the wuxi, the five elements or the 5 phases. If we're using a different model, then we can also kind of apply that to Reiki. It is a pretty malleable system. These days when I teach it, I teach it very simply. We don't have to have knowledge of the chakras because we're not there to diagnose. We're not there to move or fix. We're just there to let Reiki do its job. And that's the great thing about it. We don't have to have a complex understanding of anyone. We just have to show up for them. And it's that deceptive simplicity that makes it sometimes challenging. Like, really, I just have to receive initiation, put my hands there, and that's going to do it. But even clinical data is showing us that yes, that's really all it takes.
And so why do you think that this kind of healing isn't really like, I mean, I've never had a doctor say you should go get a Reiki session. Why isn't this, or even a therapist or whatever, I mean, why isn't this more widespread in the United States and in different other parts of the world?
Well, I think we have evidence that it's getting there. I have colleagues who regularly take Reiki into the operating room, who support the surgical team, who sit there right beside the anesthesiologist and have their hands on the patient for the duration of surgery. It's certainly not the norm, but wouldn't it be great if it were? And
Yeah.
there are collectives of people who are doing this work. Shortly before the start of the pandemic, I was part of the advisory council for an initiative to have this kind of like national certification to bring Reiki into healthcare. It would be like an optional kind of thing. And our health resources are better served by doing other things for the time being in an emergent kind of situation. The fact that we see Reiki joining the ranks of other forms of wellness as integrative medicine rather than, we'll say, alternative, it complements, it dovetails seamlessly. And as far as like conventional medicine, more and more the kinds of studies that are being done in fields like consciousness and energy medicine and all sorts of other things point to a more holistic picture of what drives the healing process. No more do we tend to subscribe to the mechanical idea of cause and effect. This thing is wrong, this drug will fix it, or this surgery will fix it, and that will be the end result. We have to recognize that we're treating a whole person. We're not just treating a symptom, we're treating everything about that person. And oftentimes the psyche and the spirit are what are neglected. So seeing spaces where Reiki and other forms of integrative medicine are coming into the scene is really inspiring to me. And I've got some friends who are doing incredible things with it.
That's
So I'm
awesome. So your
excited.
product goes to the emergency room. Is that because the patient asked for that?
So, like in the case of my friend Raven Keys, who teaches this approach to medical Reiki, it's definitely because the patient has requested it. It has to be approved by the surgeon. It has to be approved by everyone else. But all we can do as Reiki practitioners who've taken this training is learn the kind of gold standard and best practices for how to show up and support the team and not be in the way and hopefully not faint at the sight of blood or whatever else it's going to be. But also it's like helping people learn to advocate for themselves. So
Yeah.
nothing happens without that level of self-advocacy, since this is not currently the standard of practice. And I have yet to show up in an operating theater. Maybe one day. It's not high on my priority list, but if I were asked, I think I would absolutely do it. One, to support someone that I loved, and two, to support the system of Reiki and to see it moving into these frontiers.
Right.
So it's definitely about asking for it. And the great news is, since it can be done remotely in a time like now where the number of personnel involved in medical spaces is severely limited to ensure the safety of everyone, we can still do that work from the sidelines. On a monthly basis, I've got people reaching out, my best friend is having surgery, or so and so is undergoing a minor procedure. What can we do? And I show up remotely as best as I can. I get my friends and colleagues in the Reiki community to share. And this is something that I think most of us are really happy to do, because we want to see people feel as if they are taken care of. People, generally speaking, going into a really scary situation like this, just knowing that someone is there, even remotely, holding space for them, sending them love, visualizing maybe a nice, easy procedure and luminous health at the end of it, is enough to maybe put us at ease, so our body can then be less taxed by internal stress, because that external event is going to be stressful enough. So why add to it?
We tend to just, it tends to be that just pills are prescribed. And so is Reiki something that's covered by any health insurers? Do you know?
In certain parts of the world, yes. In lots of parts of the world, no. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, you can absolutely go see a qualified um, practitioner who meets the necessary requirements to be reimbursed through the national insurance. There are a few places in the States where there's at least some wiggle room for that. But, if you think about it, 50 years ago, your massage therapist or physical therapist didn't get reimbursed for insurance. You had to be pretty well off to be able to afford those things because they were considered fringe.
Right.
And we have robust quantitative data that tells us how effective those are for people's well-being. So that data is still in progress with Reiki, but it is there. It is emerging. There is more and more published every single year. So the hope is that there will be a standardized way to make this accessible and available to people. And currently, the healthcare in the US is very localized, is very different from state to state and place to place. And so it would take some pretty widespread reform of our health system, I think, to see it happen and to roll out on a national level. But there are enough people who are invested in it that hopefully that will happen in my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. So it helped you with your anxiety. What other kinds of things can Reiki help with?
Since Reiki supports overall balance and well-being, there's really nothing we can't apply it to. Another episode from my own life that I can use to illustrate: in 2012, I was in a motorcycle accident, and it was unpleasant. I was really lucky for being a motorcycle rider in an accident, but it was still not a great experience. And I was supposed to be out of work for probably 6 to 8 weeks minimum. And after 3 weeks, I was back at work. 2 weeks after the accident, my primary care physician was really mad to see me walking into the treatment room not using crutches anymore. He was even more upset to roll back my pant leg and not understand where all the swelling could have gone. It's like, what have you done? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm just following your orders and staying off my leg and, icing it and keeping it elevated. He goes, you should be way more swollen than this. And it's one of those things where you can't touch the body and not touch the soul. You can't touch the mind and not touch the body. So wherever we are focused on with our Reiki practice, we tend to experience well-being on many levels simultaneously. So we might use this because we have a very physical thing we want to heal. I know many people who are undergoing treatment, conventional treatment for critical, terminal, serious life-threatening illness who also use Reiki to support their well-being because it hastens recovery. There are some pilot studies that show recovery time after surgery, after chemo, after lots of other things is much shorter when Reiki is present versus when it is not. But we might also use it for our mental and emotional well-being. We might use it if we're experiencing grief, loneliness, separation, anxiety, overall stress, uncertainty, fears. The ways that we can experience the blessings of Reiki are myriad, and they're really malleable too, especially because you can do it anywhere that you can sit down and lay hands on the body after you've received the training. You can just perform Reiki wherever you are. Hopefully, if we're in a car in traffic, we're keeping our eyes open to do
Yeah.
this. I've certainly been, any day I'm on the road, have one hand somewhere on my body and one on the wheel if I'm stuck in traffic. So that way I can
Um,
stay calm and stay grounded and be present for whatever life is going to throw my way.
So how long does the training take?
I suppose that depends on the teacher,
Mhm.
the style or the lineage of Reiki. Traditionally, 100 years ago, it could be months and months before you were even eligible to take the second degree. You'd be attending meetings and practice sessions every single month after you received that initial kind of training seminar. These days, we like things done more quickly. So there are weekend seminars. There are one-day seminars. I mean, there are Zoom classes available, and there's high quality and low quality Reiki training of all varieties. There's high quality and low quality online training, as well as in-person training. When I teach the system of Reiki, a first degree class, so like the level 1 class, is about 8 hours of class time, depending on the size of the class and how, we'll say, interactive the class is. If we got lots of questions, we're going to use up more time. When I teach the second degree, it's usually between 5 and 8 hours. And then when I teach the third degree, which is like teaching people to become teachers, that's a 3-day seminar. So I like to see people who are committed to their practice, committed to seeing others. The hope, I can't be there to like spy on them and know whether or not they're doing this, but the hope is like after they enroll in a first degree class or they take first and second degree together, they're going to go out and use it for their
Mhm.
own benefit, for the benefit of their loved ones. And then, if they're really, really excited about it, they're going to want to find other ways to share it with others. And that might be why they enroll in the third degree training.
Awesome. So can people find out about the training through your website, theluminous.pearl.com?
Yeah, currently I don't have any in-person training dates listed. I'm going to have my
Okay.
very first conventional Reiki class since the before times coming up next month, and it's going to be a small socially distanced kind of thing. But I'm hoping as things move forward and open up for travel later in the year, I'll be able to visit some different territories and be able to offer some classes, and all of that will eventually appear on the website and across my social media. For the time being, I do a free monthly online Reiki share. So whether or not you are already a practitioner or you're just interested in Reiki, irrespective of any lineage or form of practice you're exposed to, you can always join me for those. And I keep those links in my link tree and elsewhere. So that way you can track them down. And that's just for anybody who wants to experience that firsthand.
Okay. And I'm showing your link tree there, and I'll also put it in the show notes. So, okay. Well, what if someone says, I don't really have time to do any of this? I mean, like, how long does it take to practice Reiki every day? Once you've gone to your seminar, I mean, how much time do people have to set aside to practice Reiki to have it work for them?
I guess the real question is how much time do we want to invest in feeling good? So if we're looking for a quick fix, there is no such thing. Not anywhere, not in allopathic medicine, not in psychiatry, not in Reiki. We generally don't get sick in a day. So we tend not to get well in a day. My kind of like anxiety condition is something that is like generations in the making. If you look at my family makeup, if you look at the genes involved, it, 18 years of my life before it rose to a head so much to fever pitch that I had to do something about it. So it wasn't like I took an 8-hour class, put my hands on my body for 30 minutes and never had an anxiety attack again. It's not at all like that. Generally speaking, the benefit we receive is proportional to the effort we put into it. The beautiful thing about Reiki is it's not really effort. It's just holding space. So maybe it's uncomfortable to sit there in stillness. So maybe you'll do it while listening to music. Maybe you'll do it while watching television. Is that as great as doing it in a meditative state? No, but it's better than nothing. So I encourage people to try to give themselves 30 minutes of Reiki a day once they've received the training. If you can do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening, you are miles ahead of someone without Reiki practice. If you have the propensity to give yourself more, then by all means go for that. An hour-long treatment feels like bliss. I've heard it said and felt it myself that 15 minutes of Reiki is proportional to like an hour nap. I feel more rejuvenated after 15 minutes of self-treatment than I do lying horizontal trying to be asleep for an hour in the middle of the day. I'm not a good napper. I'm just not built that way, but it is so refreshing to just devote this time to you that if you really have that experience, you usually find excuses to do it. Maybe it's 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. In the course of a day, I probably give myself well over an hour treatment, maybe an hour and a half, 30 minutes or so before bed. While I'm in bed, I'm treating myself. I give myself some first thing in the morning and then on my daily commute as well, and any other time that I can after dinner, during my lunch break. So it's not necessarily that your practice has to be in this holy sacred container of silence in a sacred temple for it to be effective. Real life happens, and I want people to feel encouraged to make use of Reiki during real life experiences.
And I would say too, like when I told you about initially when I retired, I was all hyped up and I just thought that I could easily, relax, which I didn't know how to do. And it didn't automatically happen. And my coach asked me to meditate for a certain number. She gave me options. How many minutes a day do you have to meditate? And it was like 15 was the lowest, I think. An hour was the highest. I was going to pick an hour because I'm retired. I could do an hour. And then I thought, well, I probably won't do an hour. So I'll pick 15. And then every day she'd ask, or every week, what day are you on? I'd say 1. And she'd say, why? And I'd say, because you don't get it. I'm so busy. And she wanted me to do it for 40 days straight. So she started me off then again with some moving, like you said, do it with music or do it. So with some moving meditation, which was easier for me. And then I gradually got to the 40 days straight. And that's when I realized it really does make a difference. On days when I tell myself I'm too busy and I don't have time and whatever, my day doesn't go as well. When I start off my morning with that, it feels better. And so what's the difference between meditation and Reiki?
So all Reiki practice at its heart is a meditative experience. Meditation itself is a really big umbrella that encompasses a lot of different terms and ideas and approaches. So, you have like Vipassana meditation, you have yoga, like traditional yoga asanas, the postures that you do
Yeah.
are meditative in their own right. You might have maybe more mystically inclined meditations where you're doing creative visualization or reciting an affirmation. Those can be meditative too. So the difference between that and Reiki, I mean, first and foremost, Reiki is kind of a closed practice. You become initiated to be a practitioner. And once you receive that initiation, you're a practitioner for life. And then what we do during our meditation might look a little bit different on the interior landscape, even though if on the external, it's pretty darn similar. So we've got certain focal points we use that kind of give us a shortcut to getting there. So one of them is almost like a mudra or a posture that we use called gasho in Japanese. Really poetic term. It just means palms together. What you do, literally we sit with our hands together and we have a particular kind of breathing that we do. And when you don't have time For anything else, you can spend a few moments in gasho with your palms together, doing this breathing, and you get into that Reiki space. We might also reflect on or recite the 5 precepts. I like to say them in Japanese because I'm kind of a language nerd and that works for me, but we could recite them in any language that's meaningful. And the goal, the instructions that the founder actually left were like, he says, morning and evening, put your hands in gasho, hold these precepts in your heart, recite them out loud. And what he's saying on one hand is, yes, do this little ritual of recitation, make this a meditative practice, but also if you do this from in the morning and you do it in the evening, it's not just twice a day say them, it's live your life from sun up to sundown as if you are embodying the precepts. So you start to see that your whole life becomes a meditation when you work the practice itself.
Oh, awesome. So what are the 5 precepts?
Thank you for asking. They're actually my favorite part of the system of Reiki. So I'll just to show off, I'll say them once in Japanese, and then we'll do like a line by line translation. They're super simple. So it starts with the title, and the title in Japanese is Shofuku no Hiho Manbyo no Reyaku. And then the actual body of the text is Kyou dake wa ikaru na shinpai suna kansha shite gyo wo hageme hito ni shinsetsu ni. So that double title poetically translates to the secret art of inviting happiness, the spiritual medicine of all illness. And then the precepts open with this expression, kyou dake wa, which means today only. And that kind of applies to all 5 precepts. So there are 6 lines, but only because this is like a preface to them all. So today only, anger not, worry not, practice gratitude, be diligent in your work, and show kindness to people.
That's you start your day off with that. I'm telling you, you start your day off with that as just a reminder. It sets you up for the day. And then you end your day saying that, and you could even reflect on your day and maybe realize, oh, in this situation, I got angry. And so one of the things I've learned, I don't know what you would say about this, Nicholas, is, okay, you can think, you reflect on your day. In this situation, I got angry. You could show some self-compassion first. We're all human.
For sure.
And you can visualize yourself, repeat that situation and not get angry. So visualize that situation happening and how you would have preferred to react. We practice that. And the next time it happens, we're going to be more aware and catch ourselves sooner and react maybe not from a place of anger. What do you think about that?
It is a really great and healthy exercise to do that kind of thing. One thing that I always kind of remind my students is that the precepts don't say, don't get angry ever again.
Yeah.
Because that is statistically impossible. You cannot, that is not actionable. It's not achievable. It's not a tangible goal. But it's like, the actual verb, if we break it down in Japanese, is like, don't bear anger. And if we look at the kanji, it's a very kind of descriptive term, and it shows the heart being in this really low state when we get into that space of anger. So it's, don't let this consume your heart. Okay, you got angry, you lost your temper. Did you sit and fume for hours and days and weeks and months? Maybe we're doing something wrong there. Anger is a natural human emotion. It's neither good nor bad. There's so many like wrathful deities that we see in esoteric Buddhism. That certainly the founder, being a Japanese man, a practicing Jodo or Pure Land Buddhist, he would have seen these things. Reiki itself is secular, is non-religious, can be practiced for anyone. But if we think about the images he would have been familiar with, there are these enlightened beings who are full of wrath. And it's not because you can be angry and enlightened at the same time, but we use those experiences of anger or worry or lack of compassion or lack of diligence as fuel for doing better. So don't get hung up on what went wrong. Look at how we can channel that into something better, channel it into a creative outlet.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just not worth it to stay angry for days on end or to, be stressed for days on end. So yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm going to come to one of your seminars that you said you hold monthly, and then I'm going to look for a Reiki practitioner in my area. I know that there are some, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Let's talk about your books. You've got, here's your website, The Luminous Pearl. How'd you come up with that?
It actually comes from a piece of Chinese folklore about this kind of mythological stone that glows at night. So crystals are like the other big passion I've got that people know me really well for. And I'm always about like those light bulb moments that people have. It is a cliche to say you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. Like, I'm there, I can give you tools, but you've got to work them yourselves. And so I love teaching. And when I see those moments of illumination, that just makes my heart sing. That is like the best feeling in the world. So being able to share those little pearls that light us up is magical.
So, and all right, so tell us a little bit about crystals. I went to a crystal shop the other day with my daughter, and I've been to them before too. And I just see like it's overwhelming, all these crystals. Like, and they each have, I mean, I don't know how you remember everything. They each have like a healing modality, I guess, or whatever. And how does a crystal heal you?
Well, I guess the real question is, how does anything heal us? So, crystals themselves are catalysts. If we look at things through the lens of physics and electromagnetics, we see that everything is kind of in this dance of ecstatic motion. Nothing is really solid, nothing is really standing still. And the more orderly something is, the more orderly its energy is going to be. And crystals are defined as a usually solid substance with a regular composition, so it's the same ingredients through and through, that have a repeating and symmetrical structure. They are the most orderly things that exist. So they're also going to have, therefore, the most orderly electromagnetic fields. If we bring that energy into our own, we are anything but coherent. I'm sorry if you're a listener and I'm calling you incoherent, but you are, because your liver has a different function than your big toe, which is different than your hair. And the makeup and structures and rhythms of all those things are different. So we are a veritable sea of vibrations that's in a constant state of flux. So when we bring in something like this little piece of citrine that I'm holding up, this
Yes.
expresses a particular, we'll say, bandwidth, a particular note so purely and so clearly that it's almost like a tuning fork. I can then subconsciously, my energy body wants to come into harmony with that because it is such a clear and pure tone. So that is one way that crystals heal. There may be some other models we could explore in depth. A lot of my books do that for anyone who's interested, but the the great love that I have for the mineral kingdom comes from my background in mineral science and my fascination with all things mystical. And it was pretty early on that I saw crystal healing as like the perfect intersection of things like folklore and mythology, because there's plenty of culturated ideas around rocks and minerals and gems and fossils. But then I also kind of put on my mineral science hat and started looking at these correlations between what minerals have iron and what people say about them, or things that are formed by metamorphic activity, or things that are found in really arid regions. Like what kind of correspondences are there between the geology of crystals and the reported effects that people have been writing about since, I mean, literally the beginning of writing. Some of the earliest texts that we have in cuneiform that come from like Mesopotamia and Babylon and Sumeria are lapidary texts that are descriptions of stones and their healing qualities. So this is a really ancient thing. And I just love kind of unraveling that thread and seeing how it all connects.
Oh, I love that. Because I'm going home tomorrow. I'm in Denver, and I saw that a new crystal shop opened right in downtown Stanton, Virginia, where I live. So I'm looking forward to going and checking out that shop. And now I'll be looking at it from a different point of view. And so, yeah. And so in these crystal shops, they sell pendulums.
Mhm.
Do you use pendulums?
Occasionally, sometimes it's not my favorite tool, only because if you feel really strongly about the answer, you're going to get the answer you feel strongly about. So whether it's the one you want or want to avoid, it's really easy to influence that. So kind of like how in Reiki we just hold space and let things happen. If we want to be effective at dowsing with the pendulum, we have to be able to just hold space without being attached to the outcome.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. All right. Awesome. Well, you've written, how many books have you written?
I have 7 on shelves now and an 8th one coming out next spring.
Oh my gosh. So if they go to this book website, which is intertraditions.com, and under your name, they can find all of the books?
Absolutely. So I've got
Inner Traditions. Okay.
5 books on crystals, 1 on Reiki, and 1 brand new one coming out next week on flower essences. All of them are going to be there, but also where you normally buy books, you can find them. So if you just type Nicholas Pearson into the search bar on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or anywhere else you like to buy books, I'm sure you'll be able to find me.
Yeah. So your book's coming out on 5 April on flower essences. And I went to a natural, I guess you call it a naturopath healer or something like that. And I met with her online, and she gave me this bottle of flower essences that I put these little drops under my tongue. What do flower essences do, though? I'm trying to figure that out.
So they are kind of like tuning forks for our emotions. So they're not in the business of fixing something for us, but by playing the correct pitch, we can see where we're out of balance, and subconsciously we start to make those little tiny adjustments. The founder of modern flower essence therapy described them as flooding the system with virtues, causing disease and imbalance to melt like snow in the sunshine.
Whoa. Well, I definitely have felt, I've been doing it for 2 weeks, and she gave me some certain teas. She mixed up these herbal teas and with all these flowers and stuff. And it's really, I like the taste of it and everything. And I've noticed it was to help me feel more relaxed, to just like be able to be more present and stuff. And I feel like this is all helping me.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that I worked with flower essences. Around that same time, just before I learned Reiki, I had a friend who was a flower essence practitioner who offered me this magical little bottle that I was eager to try. I mean, I was going to try anything at that point.
Yeah.
I was a new freshman in college, and just everything about that experience is kind of stressful. Going away from home for the first time that I was woefully underprepared for, overprepared for academically, but like real life, like doing laundry.
Yeah.
That was the kind of thing nobody stopped to show me how to do.
Right.
So there's a certain kind of overwhelm that comes from that. And the beautiful thing about flower essence therapy is that because it is vibrational in nature, it's not like a homeopathic remedy or an herbal tincture or an essential oil. There are no actual plant compounds in there. It's just the energy, the essence or spirit of the plant. The worst thing that happens if you take the wrong essence is nothing at all. The best thing that happens is maybe you feel better. So they work on kind of the principles of frequency. You want to take it often. It's not like, if I have a bottle right here of bamboo flower essence that I use for motivation and kind of like stick with itness. If I take the whole bottle, it's no more effective than taking just a couple of drops. So the goal is to take a couple of drops often, because our state can be out of tune very easily. It's like if you're a piano tuner, you got to strike the tuning fork and adjust the tension in that wire, and if you got it right, you've got to strike the tuning fork again and hit the key and then adjust, and so on and so forth. So to see if we're on pitch or not, we just have to introduce that tuning fork over and over again. So flower essences are extraordinarily gentle. They don't interact with anything else that we're doing because they're not chemical in nature. They're not going to impede the ability of any other part of your wellness regime, and they're just a joy. It's like a little concentrated dose of nature in a bottle.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing how I feel when I get back. Like, I think this was started because I went on a trip. I was away from home, out of my normal routine for a week in February. And then when I came back, the whole weekend, I was just like completely exhausted, but also like I felt depression, and I felt like a hand was on my back and I couldn't get off the couch. And I have tended to get that way when I get out of my routine. And so I've been away from home since 18 March, I think. And so I get home tomorrow. So I'm really interested to see how this tea that she gave me, and then this flower essence and stuff like that she's given me, helps me over the weekend, because I don't want to feel like that again. So,
well, I hope you find success with them, and may they bring you balance.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's see. Here's your other book, that Foundations of Reiki. How do you pronounce it? Ryoho. Yeah. So tell us about that book.
So this is my love song to Reiki. It is a complete manual to the practice for the first and the second degree. I kind of wrote it in part to be my classroom manual, like the textbook I use when I teach, but also to consolidate a lot of research that hadn't been collated in one place, to provide my own translations of some of the original Japanese, to provide a text that found common ground among different lineages and forms of practice, because post 1980, things really kind of began to branch off, especially in the early 2000s. We've got a complex family tree of Reiki practices around the world, although it's all one point of origin, 100 years ago. this month, things tend to evolve. So I wanted to kind of map out how that happened and to help us find common ground through shared history, shared forms of practice, shared ideas that might be expressed in myriad ways, but are still the same heart and soul. And so the hope was that people of any lineage could find some use in it. And definitely it's got lots of hands-on practices to add to your healing routine.
Awesome. Sounds like a book I need to order. I didn't order all 7 of your books and read them before this interview.
I
Sorry.
don't blame you.
I just, I interview so many authors and it's hard to get all the books and read them all. But yeah. And so you have an Instagram account too. Let's see. Let me put that up there so that people can go there. It's the Luminous Pearl is your Instagram account.
For sure. And that's the place I'm the most active. So you'll see
Okay.
more content going there, free talks every week, and all sorts of fun stuff.
Awesome. What does create a life you love living? What does a life you love living mean to you?
In part, it is challenging myself to grow and learn and kind of integrate new things. But I do that really with like the service hat on. Me growing personally just for myself is all well and good, but I have this platform to help others, to teach others, to unite others towards growing and healing. So I find fulfillment in being able to share and make authentic connection. Education is the outlet that that's expressed in, whether that's a book someone is reading or a seminar I'm giving or informal Q&A that I do on Instagram. It's that ability to be of service while still being able to grow together is just magic for me.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you reached out to me and that we were able to get you on the show. And how cool is it that it's in the month? Is it March where we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary, or is it April?
It is, yeah. So 100 years ago this month, he was on a mountain for about 3 weeks and came down, and here we are. We have Reiki in the world today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Any last minute tips before we end the show, Nicholas?
I think one thing that's specifically with Reiki in mind, if you are overwhelmed by the options, take a step back and just find an approach to Reiki and a teacher or practitioner who kind of meets your needs really well. There are lots of things that we can do to find that right person, but ultimately Reiki is about you and your well-being. So whether you are learning for self-practice or going to someone else to receive hands-on treatment from them, find something that supports your picture of well-being.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show, Nicholas. Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. I really appreciate you guys getting on a flight and leaving for Stanton, Virginia from Denver tomorrow. So I'll miss my daughter, but I'm looking forward to being home after about 2 weeks and to see my doggie and to learn more about Reiki and to visit the crystal shop that just opened in Stanton, Virginia. Now I'll look at it from a whole new perspective. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be on again next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Onward Live is sponsored by Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting. Visit my website, emilyharmon.com, to learn more about me and my coaching programs. I'd love to help you create a life you love living. Remember, every adversity is our own personal university. Sometimes the lessons are difficult, and we must learn from our experiences. Vulnerability is your superpower. You are lovable and worthy. And we discuss these topics and more because professional is personal. Thank you for joining us and engaging with me and my guest. I look forward to seeing you next time.